So I've just seen a Neil Oliver video, and he's bang on the money. And I like the excellent vocabulary the man has. I haven't got one of that good, so sorry, you're going to get basic language here. However, it's true what he says. In the old days, there was royalty who basically owned everything, including you, really. And you had to go begging, cap in hand to them. And they decided who lived, who died, who actually had any land to farm. Although if you even did farm, you wouldn't get a great deal of money out of it because the taxes were well, just ridiculous. And you were basically, the average human being had fuck all back then. I mean, proper nothing, right? And it occurred to him, and he bang on, and I believe in this case, that the people at Davos see themselves as the new royalty, right? And they see themselves as trying to bring about the time that was before. So, whereas if you went back, say, for instance, 30 or more, 40 years ago, it was a time that people could actually live on one wage, could actually own a house, that is to say, buy it, run it, have a car, have a missus, have 2.5 kids or whatever it was, right, go on holiday, right? Well, that slowly, surely has been eroded away because they realise that they don't like the idea of you actually having anything, or having any sort of a life at all. They much rather go back to the days where you went begging just to get fed. You went begging for housing, you went begging for heat, you went begging for all of these things. So you'll have nothing and be happy is literally a trip down memory lane, going back to the old days. And this is exactly what they want. And the people in Davos see themselves in the same way that I suspect the royalty used to see themselves in the old days, because royalty in the old days deemed that they were chosen by God, right, to own the land, own means of, so own money, own the food, own your freedom, just own everything, all right? They owned everything, and you had to beg. And if you didn't beg right, you didn't get it. They had the right of life and death over you. Well, that's going to be the case. So that is where we are at the moment. So Davos is a bunch of people that are working out how exactly they can take everything back off you and return life to the old days where you're all serfs. Well, you're not far off now in some cases. I mean, you've got people in Great Britain which are in housing that's not theirs, which they can't heat, which they have struggled to feed, right? Struggle to cope, all the other stuff, right? So they want all of us in a dire situation. Why? Because they're psychopaths. They fucking detest every fibre of your fabric, believe it or not. And I would wonder what it is that you've done so much to make them despise you, but just your very existence. They were brought up to despise the poor. Why? Because they're a threat. If you lot ever decided to get together, they're fucked. They know it. So they've got to keep you in such a situation, whereas you haven't got the time to actually all get together, although they slowly but surely ruin the ability of you lot getting together anyway. But if you did get together and work out what was going on and turned, they're fucked. They know it. I mean, look how many there are of you and how few there are of them. I mean, that's why they call them the 1%, right? Anyway, also we've got a war that's coming on. Now, in my time, I remember the destabilization in the Middle East. I remember the Straits of Hormuz with the Americans down there with different warships protecting the oil interests of the West, and in so doing, there was one lunatic there that was running the Vincennes while going into waters that he shouldn't have been, attacking bog hammers which weren't actually a threat at the time, and blew an innocent fucking plane out of the sky that was full of Muslims on the way to Mecca. Not good. But what happened there, that was Iran's plane, by the way. Iran said we'll get our own back at some point. They then funded Ahmed Jibril. Ahmed Jibril was out of Syria, but they were just making it up with Syria at the time, so that's kind of awkward. He then got a terrorist cell in Germany and managed to get a plane on a plane that was bound for America. The idea was supposed to blow up over the sea. It didn't. It blew up over Lockerbie. And what they did then is they went, right, well, we've got to have a war here somewhere. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Fuck it. I know what we'll do. We'll blame that terrorist thing because now we're getting on with Syria and it'd be awkward to bring it out now. We'll blame it on Libya. Libya that wants to trade oil in the gold dinar, which will fuck the petrodollar. We're all getting it, aren't we? I've been on about this before because it's very important. So we stuck them in the fucking doghouse, and we were always banging on about how the mad dog of was it? What do they call it, mad dog? I don't fucking. They just call it mad dog anyway. Just for now, until I get this shit together. I'm getting older, right? You got to give me a break. But anyway, So we had to paint Libya as bad people because, well, they own oil. But don't forget, globalists always want to make sure that they can get oil for next to nothing, fuck the country of origin, where the oil came from, over as hard as possible, whilst making as much bank as they can, and then fucking over the customer, you, me, right, over as hard as possible at the pump. But sometimes you need a war in a way to do that. What do we do? Well, the people that were screwing over at the pump, some of their kids will be in the military. We use the military to go over and rain war down on this country that's not actually giving us oil at the price we want. We then destabilise it, go in, attack the fucker, bit of genocide, you need a little bit of that going on. Then after that, we depose the leader, replace it with a leader that's suitable to globalism, and away you go. You now have your oil coming back in at the right price. You've now got rid of some population of the world. You've now sold a whole load of arms, weapons, all the things that take an army to go forward. You supply, well, you own all the companies that actually supply all that shit. Meanwhile, you probably somewhere along the lines, the people in the back that are causing a lot of this will fund both sides. So they make money out the loans. And then it goes on. So then we had the first Gulf War. That was George Bush. Now I can't remember, I wasn't exactly old enough to remember what that was all about. I was about 15 or something at the time. My mate was in it. And he said, it's nothing like you imagine, mate. It's actually very different to what you're seeing on the TV. That for me was a shock, because at that time, I was only just starting to notice that things were marrying up. Well, anyway, that seemed to stow the tits of those people that own the oil for a little while, didn't it? Great. Well, then we go on for a while and we fuck about in different places and pull on the Pilsner or some other poor cunt that didn't probably deserve it. And then, well, looks like old fucking, what's his name? Old Tash Face wants to trade in the euro. Don't ask me why. He did, which would destabilise the petrodollar and cause America a load of shit. Back to war again. So we send a load more fucking innocent people from America and England and numerous other countries into the meat grinder, where some of them will die, a load of them will end up injected full of fuck knows what, and a shitload of them will come back with Gulf War syndrome. But hey, it doesn't matter, because that's the poor people. Because I'm telling you now, if all of this 1%, if their family had to go to war to fight the war, there would never be any war. But like kings and queens of the old days, well, actually in saying that, at least in the old days, sometimes the king went to war with you. That certainly ain't the case these days, is it? But the little people fight the wars, and the rich people make money out of it. And the interesting thing is, with war, that's funded by taxpayer, right? So the taxpayer pays for the war out of his taxes, pays for the war out of the lives of his loved ones who went to war, and then what comes out of that, the oil and stuff like that, you get heavily taxed on. It's amazing, isn't it? But anyway, these people in Davos, as I say, they want to reduce you back to literal poverty while still taxing the living fuck out of you and owning the means of production, owning the money, owning everything. Just comprehend that, right? So they're going to own everything. And while they're owning everything, let me think, just doing two things. We're on site at the moment, about to tip. Will do, if that fucking net comes up. So anyway, just bear with a second. Can you imagine them being so utterly fucking greedy that you're not content with owning everything? That's not good enough for you now. You've still got to make these peasants' life miserable because you fucking detest them. Just imagine that. 1 second. We are working as it is. But seems he's had enough. Oh God. Can't do always two things at once. So at the moment the truck's tipping. And I'm sat next to a slough because we're tipping our old landfill. And I think he's probably going to ask me how many more of these I'm doing. One more here than somewhere else. But anyway, back to the story. How is it that a group of people who have everything you could ever want in life hate us still that much that they want to make us suffer more? And all it is mental health problems. These people are utterly, utterly sick. They're as mentally ill as you can get. Put it this way, if they were poor, they'd be in a nut house. But because they're rich, they make policy. Imagine that. Hang on a second. I can't just go fucking off here. Otherwise, because the body's up like that, and it's so unstable here, we'll tip over. So you can probably see that body going down, and then we'll be able to fuck off. But there it is. I better get on with some work. But yeah, that war that's coming, and I suppose that's what the Black Swan is. The war with Iran, that will be a Black Swan, will it? That destabilises everything. And then obviously the fallout from Davos, and then you've got the latest fucking flu coming, whatever that thing is, and we're still chucking money and resources at Ukraine. This is going to be one fucked up year, kids. Trust me on this one. This will be like a ride you've never felt before. But gotta go through some hard times to get the good times. So anyway, there it is. Right, I'm going to get off, and I'll speak to you in a bit.